In the spring of 1934, the town of Ashford's Crossing appeared on every map of western Pennsylvania. It had a post office, a school, a rail stop, a population listed at 412. By winter of the same year, Ashford's Crossing still appeared on the maps, but it no longer existed. Not burned, not flooded, not abandoned in the way towns usually are. It was simply absent. No evacuation orders, no newspaper coverage, no death records matching the number of people who vanished. And for reasons that remain unclear, no federal agency has ever publicly acknowledged that anything went wrong. The story begins with a letter that was never supposed to be found. The letter surfaced in 1998 inside a box of personal effects donated to a small historical archive in Pittsburgh. The box belonged to the estate of a man named Caleb Worth, a civil engineer employed by the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation from 1929 to 1941. Most of the contents were unremarkable. Slide rules, notebooks, inspection logs. But at the bottom of the box was an unaddressed envelope marked only with a date, November 17, 1934. Inside was a 6-page handwritten letter, never mailed, never signed. The opening line read, "If this is being read outside the valley, then the containment failed." The archivist assumed it was fiction until she tried to locate Ashford's Crossing. Ashford's Crossing sat, or once sat, where two rail lines intersected near a narrow river gorge locals called Black Hollow. The river itself has since been renamed, though older geological surveys still use the original name in faded ink. What's strange isn't that the town vanished. It's that it continued to be referenced for years afterward. Rail maintenance logs from 1936 list temporary delays near Ashford's Crossing. Census documents from 1940 show crossed-out population figures with handwritten notes reading site invalid. Even military maps from World War II mark the area with a blank square, no label, no explanation, as if something had been deliberately removed but not replaced. Caleb Worth's job, according to his employment records, was simple: inspect infrastructure along aging rail corridors. But his personal notebooks tell a different story. The first mention of Ashford's Crossing appears in his journal dated October 2, 1934. Arrived late afternoon. Town smaller than expected. Locals unwelcoming but polite. They watched the river too much. At first, his notes resemble those of any traveling inspector. He describes the bridge supports, the rail alignment, minor corrosion issues. Then the tone shifts. There is an understanding here. Unspoken. They don't go near the water after dark. They don't explain why. He notes that the river doesn't behave correctly. The current slows near the crossing, thickens, as though moving through resistance. Debris doesn't float downstream. It circles. He also mentions a sound. Low frequency. Felt more than heard. Strongest at night. According to town records, what little survives, Ashford's Crossing was founded in 1871 by workers building the rail spur. Several early settlers died during construction, mostly listed as accidents. Drownings, cave-ins, exposure. Nothing unusual for the era, but death certificates from the town show a strange consistency. Causes of death are often vague, sometimes left blank, and ages frequently corrected in ink. And nearly every family line ends abruptly. No records of people moving away. No marriage licenses filed elsewhere. No burial plots beyond the small hillside cemetery, which contains fewer than 50 marked graves. Where did the rest go? Worth stayed in Ashford's Crossing longer than scheduled. His supervisor sent 2 telegrams requesting updates. Neither received a reply. In his journal, the reason becomes clear. They asked me not to leave. Not threatened. Not begged. Asked. He writes that the town council, 3 men and 1 woman, invited him to a meeting held after sundown in the schoolhouse. The meeting notes are fragmented, as if written under stress. They explain the balance, the number, the reason the town exists. He never explains what the number is, only that it must be maintained. If someone leaves, someone must arrive. If too many arrive, the river takes its due. On November 12, 1934, Worth documents the first disappearance. A rail worker named Jonah Pike, Last seen walking home near the gorge. No body found. The town did not report him missing. Instead, they crossed his name out of a ledger and wrote another beneath it, a child born that same night. Worth underlines this entry twice. By November 15th, his handwriting deteriorates. I understand now why they stay. It doesn't hunt. It corrects. The sound isn't a warning. It's a measurement. He describes going to the river at night against the town's advice. Standing on the bridge, feeling something beneath the water, not moving upward but pressing outward, as though the river were a skin stretched too tight. I felt counted. The last journal entry is dated November 18th, 1934. Tomorrow the adjustment happens. They say it will be quick. They say the town will be spared. There are no entries after that. Officially, Ashford's Crossing was declared uninhabited in December 1934. No explanation given. Rail service was rerouted. The post office dissolved without forwarding addresses. No missing persons investigation was ever opened. And yet, reports persisted. Hunters in the 1950s claiming to see lights in the valley. Hikers in the 1970s reporting a low humming sound near the river. Modern GPS devices failing consistently in a narrow, unmarked stretch of land. And sometimes, very rarely, people report seeing a town that shouldn't be there. Smoke from chimneys, a bell ringing, figures standing on a bridge, watching the water, waiting. That letter from Caleb Worth ends with a warning written in darker ink. Pressed so hard the paper nearly tore. If Ashford's Crossing is ever remembered too clearly, the balance will seek replacement. Towns are easier to erase than rivers. For nearly 60 years, Ashford's Crossing remained a footnote that no one bothered to read. It wasn't listed as abandoned. It wasn't listed as destroyed. It simply wasn't listed at all. That absence, more than any rumor, was what eventually drew attention back to the valley. The renewed interest didn't come from historians. It came from missing people. In May of 1991, a college student named Evan Richter vanished while hiking alone in western Pennsylvania. His car was found parked near a trailhead that, according to modern maps, did not exist. The keys were still in the ignition. His backpack was later recovered several miles downstream, dry, undamaged, containing a notebook filled with sketches of bridges and water lines. The final page contained a single sentence. I think I walked into a place that needed me. At the time, the note was dismissed as metaphor, but it wouldn't be the last. Between 1991 and 2007, at least 12 people disappeared within a 6-mile radius of the old Black Hollow Gorge. Officially, these cases were never connected. Different counties, different circumstances, different explanations. Unofficially, the pattern was obvious. Each person had stopped moving, not abruptly, not violently. They simply ceased to exist between one location and the next. Cell phones went dead in the same area every time. Search dogs refused to approach the riverbank, and witnesses consistently described a sound, a low, rhythmic vibration they couldn't quite hear but felt in their chest, as if something enormous were breathing beneath the ground. In 2009, a journalist named Laura Mendel began pulling those cases together. She wasn't chasing a ghost story. She was chasing a clerical error. While reviewing missing persons data, she noticed that several cases had been quietly reclassified years later. From missing to status unresolved, no follow-up required. That designation was rare, and it appeared only in cases tied to Black Hollow. Laura requested access to older state infrastructure records, expecting resistance. She didn't expect cooperation. Within weeks, she was granted access to a restricted archive, on the condition that nothing be copied, photographed, or removed. That archive contained documents that should not have existed. Engineering diagrams dated 1898. Cross-sectional drawings of underground chambers beneath the riverbed. Pressure measurements taken decades before the technology to measure them properly existed. One document, stamped internal, do not disseminate, referred to the site as Population Stabilization Zone, Ashford Node. Laura later said this was the moment she stopped believing the disappearances were accidental. The diagram showed a network beneath the gorge, not natural caves, but reinforced structures integrated into the bedrock itself. Some sections were labeled resonance chambers. Others simply read occupied, occupied by what was never specified. But handwritten notes in the margins offered clues. Human presence reduces fluctuation. Vacancy increases pressure. Migration must be balanced. Laura cross-referenced these notes with census data. Every spike in population loss across nearby counties coincided with unexplained increases in river activity. Minor floods, sinkholes, localized tremors. The land responded to absence. One file stood out above the rest. A transcript labeled Audio Log Trial 6. There was no recording in the archive, only a typed transcription. It described an experiment conducted in 1934, the year Ashford's Crossing disappeared. According to the transcript, federal engineers, working quietly, without public oversight, had installed acoustic sensors beneath the river to determine the source of the low-frequency vibration reported by residents. At first, the readings were static. Then the system adjusted. The vibration began to modulate, not randomly, intentionally. The transcript notes describe the sound changing when people moved closer to the river, when they left, when someone stood alone on the bridge. Then comes the line that caused Laura to stop reading for nearly an hour. Resonance increases when the subject recognizes it. Awareness mattered. Being observed mattered. The final portion of the transcript describes an unplanned event. A technician, name redacted, entered the chamber beneath the gorge during the trial. Sensors recorded a sudden drop in resonance, then a spike, then silence. The transcript ends with a single annotation. Subject integrated. No recovery effort is mentioned. No fatality report. Laura tried to publish her findings. No outlet would touch them. Editors didn't reject the pitch. They avoided it. Emails went unanswered. Meetings were canceled. Then her source inside the archive stopped responding. Then her own access credentials stopped working. Then she received a letter. No return address. Inside was a photocopy of a single page from Caleb Worth's letter. The final warning, along with a handwritten note. You're making the count unstable. In 2011, Laura disappeared. Her apartment showed signs of sudden departure. Laptop open. Coffee still warm. Notes spread across the table, connecting names, dates, and places that didn't officially exist. Her phone last pinged near Black Hollow. Authorities ruled it voluntary disappearance. No body. No investigation. 2 years later, an anonymous source leaked a corrupted digital file to an online forum dedicated to unsolved disappearances. The file contained thousands of names. Some dated back to the 1800s, some from the present decade. Next to each name was a timestamp and a single word, accounted, or required. At the bottom of the file, partially overwritten, was a line of text repeating endlessly until the data broke down. Stability maintained through presence. People who downloaded the file reported strange effects. Headaches, disorientation, a sensation of being watched when near running water. Several users deleted the file after experiencing recurring dreams of bridges and slow-moving rivers. The forum was shut down within days. The file vanished. What remains is only inference. That Ashford's Crossing was not erased by disaster, but by design. That the structure beneath the river still exists, that it requires people to function, and that when towns vanish quietly, it isn't because no one noticed. It's because someone was making sure the number stayed right. The monitoring station near Black Hollow is not marked on any public map. It doesn't have a sign. It doesn't have a road. It doesn't appear in any federal budget line that can be requested through normal channels. Officially, it doesn't exist. And yet, it has been staffed continuously since 1982. The station was established after an incident that never reached the news. In August of that year, a group of 5 geology students from Ohio State University requested permission to conduct soil resonance testing near the Old Gorge. Their application was approved at the state level and quietly flagged at the federal level. No one stopped them. No one warned them. They arrived on August 14th. For days later, only 2 left. The official explanation was terrain-related accident. The internal report tells a different story. According to recovered transcripts, the students detected an anomaly almost immediately, a harmonic vibration inconsistent with geological formations. The frequency was too regular, too precise. When they lowered equipment into the riverbed, the vibration synchronized with their movements. One of the students recorded an audio log, later transcribed and classified. It's reacting. When we stand still, it settles. When we move, it shifts. On the third night, one student went missing. No splash, no struggle, just absence. The vibration dropped sharply afterward, as if something had been satisfied. That was when permanent monitoring began. Not to investigate, to observe, because observation, according to decades of data, was the only thing that kept the system stable. In 2019, a technician named Mark Ellison made a mistake. He had been assigned to the station for 7 years, longer than anyone before him. Isolation had begun to affect him. He reported vivid dreams, recurring thoughts about bridges, and an irrational sense of responsibility for the area. During a routine maintenance check, he disabled one of the acoustic sensors for 6 minutes. That's all it took. The data spike was immediate. Resonance increased by 38%. Pressure readings shifted in multiple chambers. And a new signal appeared, one that had never been recorded before. It wasn't vibration. It was structure, a pattern forming within the sound itself, almost like language. Mark attempted to record it. The recording still exists. It has never been released publicly. Those who have heard fragments describe it as overlapping tones, some human, some not, repeating sequences that trigger intense emotional responses. Fear, nostalgia, recognition. One analyst reportedly broke down in tears, insisting he recognized his grandmother's voice. Another resigned the same day. Mark Ellison disappeared 2 weeks later. His last entry in the station log was brief. It's not counting people anymore. It's counting attention. Since then, protocols have changed. Monitoring is now passive only. No experiments. No direct interaction. And most importantly, no acknowledgement. Because the data suggests something terrifying. The system beneath Black Hollow no longer relies solely on physical presence. Awareness itself has weight. Every time someone researches Ashford's Crossing, every time the name is spoken aloud, every time the story circulates online, the resonance shifts, slightly, but measurably, as if the structure is adapting to a new form of occupancy, memory. That explains the disappearances of information, why articles vanish, why threads are deleted, why maps remain blank. Forgetting is no longer negligence. It is containment. In late 2023, an automated alert was triggered at the monitoring station for the first time in 4 years. The alert was simple. Population stability compromised. No location listed. No corrective action suggested. Just a timestamp and a rising resonance curve. The final internal memo associated with the site contains one sentence, written by someone whose name has been removed entirely from a record. If the river is remembered by too many, it will seek balance elsewhere. Ashford's Crossing is not a ghost town. It is not haunted. It is not cursed. It is functional, and it is patient. The river still flows through the gorge, quiet and slow, carrying no signs of what lies beneath. People still pass nearby, unaware that their presence, however brief, is being measured, counted, adjusted, and somewhere below the waterline, something ancient and deliberate listens for imbalance, waiting for the moment memory outweighs silence. Because when that happens, the town won't return. The river will simply find a new place to keep the count.